Welcome to the Contemporary Issues class. Nice to see everyone here today. We're going to have a good discussion and presentation on gun violence and related legislation in Colorado. So we welcome Laura Reeves today. And also from our new Gun Sense Committee here at St. Andrew, Paul Loftus is going to tell us about that in just a minute. But before we do that, I'm Steve, our leader of our class, and I want to give our usual announcements. So welcome Zoomers from around the world, including Susan in Toronto. I always like to recognize Susan being our out-of-country visitor. And yes, and Joe has his hat on. Like your hat, Joe. Looks good. Please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen when you're not talking so we can keep down the background noise. And we are recording this for future playback on for folks who can't be here or would like to watch it later. And other announcements, anything going on? Oh, I have a little announcement about a men's retreat coming up here at St. Andrew. If anybody would like more information on that, I have handouts here. It's a chance to come and spend time with Rev Mark and Jerry, our speakers this year at the Glen Erie Conference Center in Colorado Springs. It should be a good time. So I want to promote that. And any more announcements? Anybody want to promote anything, classes or outreach services? Okay.
Highland Ranch Community is playing next Sunday afternoon.
Band is
So
afternoon,
3 o'clock at the Thunder Ridge.
Rock Canyon.
Rock Canyon.
Rock Canyon High School.
So there's always,
very good.
there's like 75 members of that. band. Yeah.
It's always a good presentation.
Where is
Good.
that?
Rock Canyon High School, 3 o'clock next Sunday.
Come on up. And we've got a microphone here too. Good. Well, we want to thank Paul and Laura for being here today. And going to give Paul a chance to tell us about pretty much a new committee here at St. Andrew. I'd like to know what they're doing, how people can join.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Hi, everyone. My name is Paul Loftus.
Close, Paul.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There we go.
All right, thanks. I am working with the social justice group here at St. Andrew to help put on classes and programs that discuss gun violence and prevention and awareness. And the name of the group here at St. Andrew is called Gun Sense. And we have a sign-in sheet that will be circulating through the presentation. If you don't see it come by, please find it wherever it is. Sign up to learn more about future programs and classes that we'll be putting on throughout the year. Wanted to give you a couple of examples of programs we did last year. We had one with Moms Demand Action. If you're familiar with them, they're a group fighting for public safety measures that can protect people from gun violence. And a program provided by Be Smart, which is a campaign promoting responsible gun ownership to reduce child gun deaths. So we had a couple of those programs last year. We didn't have them in this class. We had them at other times. But those are some examples. And we have some really exciting things coming this year. More stuff will be forming as the year goes on. But someone who has been instrumental in getting Gun Sense going and in helping to get these programs scheduled and arranged is speaking to us today. So please welcome Laura Reeves.
I'm going to say that I'm so happy that St. Andrew is committed to doing this. I love the social justice organization. It's a big reason I go to this church. And when they decided to add gun safety and gun sense, it just made me feel great because it lets me know that they're aware of our issues and that they want to take a pivotal role in supporting our community in the best way possible. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm glad that we've been able to be engaged with some of their work. And I'm grateful that they are so welcoming to us. And this is another example. So thank you. I was here about 1.5 years ago, I think, and it was in the summertime. So it was after our legislative session in 22. And we discussed some of the laws that we had passed, but also it was a time when our federal government passed its very first set of federal laws in 20 years, which was really significant. And since our federal government has made some further steps around funding and around different executive measures. And so that progress keeps continuing, and I'm really grateful for that. And I'm also really grateful for the work that's been happening in Colorado. Steve touched on some of the key laws that were passed last year in the 23 legislative session. And these were really important ones we've been waiting a long time to get that will have significant impact on saving lives. One is a 3-day waiting period before buying a firearm, and that is statistically shown to allow people to have this cooling off period. So the goal is to prevent violence around impulsive decisions, specifically to others and to oneself. So that's an important step for Colorado. The other one was a change to the age limit. Before last year, you had to be 21 to get a handgun, but only 18 to get a long gun. And that includes
That doesn't make any sense, does it?
no. So the rule was changed. It's being challenged, but I feel confident that that law will stay. Yeah. And I'm really grateful that they went and did that. They also expanded ERPO. I know that you've touched on ERPO here a little bit. I know you've had other groups.
Red flag law.
The red flag law, yeah. And they expanded who can create an ERPO. An ERPO, it's called an extreme risk protection order. It's when you have a concern about somebody that they may be violent towards themselves or to others, and it allows you to go petition before a judge and temporarily, if they just deem it worthy, they can temporarily hold their weapons for a period of time until they prove that they've gotten some help and that it's now a safe thing for them to have these firearms again. So it's a really important tool. It is part of Colorado land, even though, like, it's across Colorado, even though some counties have said they won't enforce it. It is a law. It does apply here in Douglas County. Our law enforcement has used it in Douglas County. And so there is a lot of programming to teach people about this. And now more people, mental health professionals, and more people in law enforcement can now enact these if they see a concern. So if you ever want to have a broader discussion about that law, there are lots of groups doing education around that. Ceasefire does a great job with it, and I know they'd love to come talk to you about it. But anyhow, that was expanded last year. And then there was one bill that came up for a vote and did not pass, but it is back this session, and I'm excited to talk about that. A lot of people call it an assault weapons ban. It's not quite that. It doesn't prohibit possession, but it does. The goal is to prohibit manufacture, sale, and transfer of those type of weapons here in Colorado. And that one will be coming up again, and I will talk to you a little bit about that. So, sorry, do you?
Just tell me to go to the next slide.
Yeah, if you want, you could just hit that slideshow button.
Slideshow.
Yeah. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can just go to the agenda. I'll just talk a little bit about what we'll cover today. It should.
Should it automatically advance?
No, I think it'll just have to.
Click on it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So Paul talked to us about what's happening here at St. Andrew, and I do encourage you to sign up so you can stay abreast of the things that are going to be coming. I'm really excited to hear about some of the potential programming that will be happening this year. I'll talk to you a little bit about the group that I'm part of, Moms Demand Action. Then I'll talk to you about our Advocacy Day. We do this every year, and in fact, it's done across the country. Every group does it in each state, and ours is coming up this week. So you are all invited if you'd like to come. You don't have to be a volunteer with Moms. You can come and we'll help educate you about the bills that are coming up. We'll help educate you about how to lobby, how to share your stories. We can even talk to you about testifying in committees. And then you get to go with your neighbors to go talk to your legislators that day. So we'll talk about that. And then I'll cover some of the gun safety legislation that is being moved through our session. Our session started in every year. It goes from January to May. Each legislator gets 5 bills. And so it is a very, very hectic time. Things go really quickly, and sometimes it's a little tough to keep track of all the different changes. So I'm bringing you the latest and greatest that I know, but things could change. And I can send an update to Steve with all the links so you can follow any bill that I talk about today that seems interesting to you. And lastly, I'll touch on elections. This is a huge election year, not just federally, but locally. And we have a program called Gun Sense Candidates, and I'll touch on that, and then I'll share some of the important election dates that are coming up. And then if you have any questions, you will cover those. So I wanted to start with a really important part of our organization. We are always making sure we're grounding our work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. We value diversity, we advance equity, and we demonstrate inclusion. We want to make sure that we are focused and centering the groups and the people and the communities that are most touched by gun violence. And we also want to make sure we're being as inclusive as possible with the people that we bring into our group. So we are survivors, we are victims, we are witnesses, we are change makers, advocates, we are gun owners, and we are men, women, youth. We run the gamut. We include everybody. A lot of times we're called Moms Demand Action because it was a mom that started it, but a lot of people refer to it as mothers and others, so that to make sure that everybody can be part of it. Okay. So just to show you, this was our meeting last week. We had it at the Lone Tree Library. We had a variety of people, a variety of genders. We have several gun owners in that group. We have people from all walks of life that are coming together for a common mission. And so this organization was started around 11 years ago by a woman named Shannon Watts. It was started the day after Sandy Hook. She was a mom of 5 kids in Indiana and was just fed up with what was happening and really wanted to see change. She saw the kind of change that Mothers Against Drunk Driving was able to make and wanted to create her own organization that would create something like that. So she started out with a Facebook page and just had a handful of friends. And in that 11 years time, we have over 10 million supporters across the country. And it has expanded. So we have our group, Moms Demand Action. We have a Students Demand Action organization and a survivor network, which is really, really powerful. And we are all under the umbrella of Everytown. And that organization does a lot with research and funding different programs. And we also partner with a lot of community groups. And I'll send a link to that. And it's a great place to go find the latest and greatest studies, data, and evidence for anything that we try to do. So why is this important? I joined about 6 years ago, and at that time, just over 100 people a day were dying from gun violence. That number is now 120 Americans are killed with guns, and over 200 are injured with firearms. And that's a really important number to think about. We often don't talk about the people who are injured by firearms, but that is a lifelong impact to the individual and to their caregivers and to their family. And gun violence, I'm sure many of you, it has touched your life in some way, whether it be a fatality or an injury. And that number is, to me, uncalled for. This is, to me, every single one of these deaths and injuries are preventable. And so that's my personal goal, is to see that number go to 0. And just to talk through another really alarming statistic and another reason why I'm here. I'm a mom of 4. And right now in this country, firearms are the leading cause of death for our children. And I think as adults, that's on us. And that's unacceptable. It passed motor vehicles. Yeah.
4,700. Wow.
And that was in 2021. Yeah. And a lot of people will say, if you don't, can we just go back to that one? Yes, it's an issue with mental health. It's an issue with video games. It's not. It's not. These are very similar high income countries. We are by far and away have a very unique problem with gun violence. These other countries have all the same problems that we do with mental health. They have the same access to the internet, the same access to video games. The one thing they don't have access to is readily available access to firearms. And so a lot of times you also hear laws don't work, criminals will do what they want, people will do what they want. That's actually not true. The next slide will show you what happens. This is how we rank states that have really strong gun laws. As national leaders, then we have the next category of making progress, missing key laws, weak systems, national failures. So on the left-hand side, that's the strength of their gun laws. If you can see, if you're a national leader, you've got a really strong set of gun laws. If you look on the other side, that is correlating in that state, the number of gun deaths per 100,000. You can tell when you have strong gun laws, you have low gun deaths. It's exactly correlated. And I'll also send a site in where you can, it's called Every Stat, and you can click on your local area or your state, and it'll tell you exactly what your state looks like. What laws do you have? What laws are you missing? What do your gun deaths look like? What do your gun injuries look like? What cost does it cost your state every year to have this gun violence? That's a really interesting statistic. So this is why I do this work, and this is why it's so important, because I know that these laws do make a difference. And for our organization, we like to focus on two things: who's being impacted, so where is most of the gun violence happening, and what are the proven evidence-based type of laws and solutions that will fix those problems. So that's what our organization works on. Okay. So, and this is how we do it. We pass stronger gun laws. We exist with the knowledge that gun violence is preventable, and we work in our own communities, and we partner with folks. We also make sure that we aren't stepping into communities where we don't live. What we do there is we make sure we work with the groups that are already doing that work, that have trust, have knowledge, and know the issues there, and we come alongside them and we support them. So those are how we make sure we're able to touch the right places. And so this is the work that you could find moms doing really in any state, but we do all of this in Colorado. We support the gun laws, we support local and partners and their strategies, which I just touched on. We elect gun sense candidates, we secure gun storage, we train and support volunteers, and I can't remember what that last piece says. Let's see. Oh, we're committing to do what it takes to keep people safe. And so these are some of the national programs that we have underneath the Moms umbrella. Paul touched on Be Smart. That's a really incredible program. It's really meant for adults, specifically gun owners or anybody that is around gun owners. And it talks about, that's an acronym, and it talks through all the different parts about gun safety or secure storage. It tells you about some of the signs that you may see of suicide, you know, some of the warning signs. It talks to you about how to actually secure your guns. And it also helps people have the conversations with others if they're going over to a relative's house or for a play date. How do you ensure that they are making sure that their firearms are safe before your child goes over there? So that's one program, and they have done some work here, and they could come back and they do a really nice presentation. We have another group called GSAN, and those are for folks that really want to be at home doing this work, and they can send out national texts, they can make phone calls and welcome people, tell them about important events. And then we have the Gun Sense Voter Program. That's what I'm mostly engaged in now. That's vetting candidates and making sure that they understand that it's an important issue and seeing what their commitment is. And then they can either get a distinction or a endorsement. And we'll talk about that later, but that's really a pivotal piece around elections, and that's just been growing and growing. But one more thing that we do is we have another program called One Thing You Can Do, and that is the national program for the red flag laws or the ERPO laws that we just touched on. And that's a program that teaches people that these tools are out there if they have a loved one that they're concerned about and they want to make sure that they can provide some extra protection.
Is every town over all of those groups?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so all of the ones that I just talked about are under Moms, but every town is and we're all, Moms is all unpaid, we're all volunteers. Every town is the kind of paid organization, so they actually have employees. That's why they're able to do research and funding and stuff, and everything we do is volunteer. Okay, so one of our big days every year is Colorado Advocacy Day. It's a really powerful day. Ours happens to be next week on the 29th. All of you are welcome to come, and I'll give you a QR code and a link if you want to sign up or just come see. You wouldn't have to do anything. You could just come see what it's about. But it's where people from across the state come together on a single day, and we all go into the Capitol at once. We make our presence known and we start talking to our specific legislators about what our needs are around gun safety. So we do that by telling our personal stories. We make sure we're really specific in how we advocate for stronger gun laws. We hold them accountable for things they promised to do or things that they have neglected to do. And we remind them that this is their job. They were elected by us, they work for us, and their job is to keep people safe. So this is the layout of the day. It starts at 8:30. The whole group meets across the street at the First Baptist Church. I don't know if you've ever been down there, but it's directly across the street. We meet down in the basement. There's a big area there. We listen to legislators come in and talk about the legislative priorities for this year. They talk about specific laws that are coming up or bills that are coming up into committee. They answer any questions, and then they teach us how to lobby. They teach us how to have those conversations with our legislators. And then we'll break everybody up into local areas, so you're with your neighbors. And then those are the people you'll go to the Capitol with, and you'll meet with your specific representatives. So you're there until about 10, then we walk to the Capitol. We start at the Capitol steps. We take this really cool picture there. Everybody's in their red shirts or their mom shirts. And then they enter the lobby, the Capitol, and they start to do the lobbying. And they're there about 2 hours, but that's really flexible. You can come for just a little bit. You could stay the whole time. You could meet with a variety of people, and everyone is welcome. Anybody can come, including kids or, you know, whoever you'd like to be there. So that's the day. Let me show you a few pictures. That was last year. What was unique about that day is East High School, which is very close to the Capitol, had just had two really significant gun violence incidents at their school that impacted their fellow students, their peers, and their educators. And they were fed up. They were done. So they marched from their school, the students, down on the same day we were there, and they joined with us, and we all got to go in together, help make sure that their voices were heard, and that the legislators had to look them in the eye and say why they would or wouldn't vote to protect them. It was really incredible. And then the next photo just shows prior years. It's just been growing. But it's everybody that comes just really learns a lot. I think they leave feeling really empowered. And I think they realize, for a lot of people, they've never been in the Capitol, and it helps them realize that it's a very accessible place. I think Colorado is very unique because we really do have a lot of power there. Every bill that is written or proposed by a legislator is heard in committee. It's not like on the federal level where it's determined by the speaker if it's heard or not. Every single bill is read. So every single bill goes to committee, and every person that wants to testify has time. They won't cut you off. So sometimes hearings will go till 3 in the morning, but every person that wants to testify and share their story or share their opinion will have a chance to be heard. And they're making it more inclusive. You can do it online, you can do it in person, you can send in written testimony. So I really do see this as the people's house, and they want to hear from you. You are welcome there. So even if you don't go this week, you're welcome anytime. It'd be a fun field trip. Yeah. I used to work with Interfaith Alliance and take folks from St. Andrew down there, and it was really great to see people get to go there and understand that their voices were important. So if you want to come, that's a link. I'll send Steve the link. If you want to pull up that QR code, you could RSVP right now. But if you want to learn more, we can, we'll keep chatting. So this is an election year. Everybody in the House is up for their seat again, and a few of our senators are up. So sometimes during election year, you won't see as strong of gun bills as you might hope. That's kind of how it has been in the past. This is changing, and I am so grateful. First of all, candidates are leading with gun safety as a priority. They're not hiding the issue. They're not being as wishy-washy or non-committal as they used to be. And now they're putting their names on really important bills. So I'm excited to show you what we have this year. I'm going to show you quite a lot. We don't have to cover all of these. I'm trying to do them in order of significance. So I'll just kind of give you a highlight, and then we can touch on each one. So this is what I described as the assault weapons ban. It's called Prohibit Certain Weapons Used in Mass Shootings. This next one is important for all of us here. Okay. Okay, prohibiting carrying firearms in sensitive places. So basically that would prohibit statewide, so it wouldn't be at a local determining level. Not bringing firearms into areas where there are typically a lot of crowds or young people. So that would be zoos, that would be arenas, university campuses, places of worship. Now, there is an exception if you have a paid security guard or whatnot, but yeah, so this one is really important and I'm excited to see that one. This one is really exciting, specifically here in Douglas County. This is called school safety measures. It talks about the security guard type of programs a lot of schools have implemented. Most schools have SROs, and those are existing law enforcement officers that are trained and very familiar with the weapons. They go through post-training on an ongoing basis. Some schools have started hiring people and allowing them to be armed. I don't know if you're aware, but at the STEM shooting, there was a security guard and some of the students were actually injured by that individual. He was not the shooter, you know. So it's not always the safest thing to have somebody in there if there's not a lot of criteria and really strong laws and guidelines around how they're trained, what type of training, what kind of weapons they can have, who can do it, what kind of background checks they go through. So this puts a lot of robustness around that training and those requirements, and it prevents teachers from being armed. So that's really important because districts, we don't know how many districts in Colorado have armed teachers because they're not required to tell. And so sometimes you'll be in a school and you will not know that they have armed teachers. I think that's really dangerous. And so this, if passed, would prevent that. So I'm really glad about this bill.
Laura, these are all bills that have been introduced
Yes,
this session.
yes,
So they've
Yes.
not been passed yet, but they're
in progress.
in progress.
Yeah, they're all, each one of these bills is in a different stage. So when you see these names here, if it says HB 24, what that means is that bill was started in the House in the year of 2024. Yeah, and then it each gets an individual number. You'll notice some of the next ones are Senate bills. Those were started in the Senate. So it always gets introduced, then it goes to committee. If it comes out of committee, then it goes for a floor vote. And then it starts on the other side. Then that same process happens through the Senate. If there are changes made on the way, the other side has to vote on it. So it's quite a process. Everybody gets their say, but all of these have either been introduced or already passed one committee. And I'll show you where you can find the latest information. Yes.
What is the first one, House Bill 24? What does the thing?
Let me see. I've got them here. It is 1292. And I will also send all of these to Steve. These are all links that will take you to the exact bill language. And on the website, you can actually see exactly where it is in terms of progress. So you can see what committee is it in, what committee did it go to, what were the votes, and what were the amendments. So they'll show you all the changes to the bill language, any amendments that were added or voted down. Yeah, and another really interesting thing about our webpage, the legislative webpage, you can go and listen to any of these committees. So you can, if you don't want to go down and testify or be in the committee room, you can listen to the discussion, the debate, the votes, all of it. You can even listen to the floor debates and the floor votes. So they've done a really nice job of making sure that Coloradans can stay engaged with this process. This next one is concealed carry permit training. So before, you could get a concealed carry permit without ever shooting a gun or without ever being trained on it. You would go to a training, but it was not always consistent. It was not always, some of them were less serious than others. And so this puts some requirements around the type of training you have to have and how much hands-on experience you have to have before you can get that permit. The next one is very interesting. This is firearm liability insurance, and it would require owners of firearms to take out liability insurance through homeowners or renters insurance to the level of about $100,000 per person that might be injured with their firearm on their property. So that can even be unintended shooting. So if it's not secured and that person is injured, they would be liable for making sure they fund them. There's also provisions in this law that talk about, requirements for the insurance companies, what they need to have, and then also provisions for people who might, not have significant financial means.
Lauren, do some other states have that requirement?
I believe so. I know California has something very similar. I'm not quite sure all the different states, but I could look that up.
Gun
Yeah.
owners won't like that one.
No, they're not gonna like any of these. Yes, yeah,
That one will cost them money.
Yeah.
right, right. The next one. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
That's an example of a bill, though. So this is an example of, when you go on to the legislative page, what it looks like. And below will be, you'll show you the sponsors and all the language. It's, there's a lot of information. Sorry, I think it's just to the left. Oh, yeah. Okay, so this one is, expanding some of the protections for victims of crime, specifically domestic crimes. So this means if you have to do a temporary protection order, it will, it puts more robustness around that, and it also includes firearms. So if somebody has a temporary protection order, if they've committed a domestic crime, they will hold those firearms for that period of time. It used to be just if they had a permanent protection order. And that's a really important one, and that happens here in Highlands Ranch. A lot of times when you hear about gun violence, it's a domestic violence incident, and somebody will have been found guilty of doing something, but they'll still have access to their firearms. Okay, now this one, we won't go into a ton of detail about this, but essentially this is allowing the Colorado Bureau of Investigation to have authority to investigate prohibited purchasers. So right now, if somebody commits some type of crime or there's some violation, it's up to the county to be able to call the CBIN. Now this just gives them the authority because they have access to information that local organizations might not. So if they've tried to do a straw purchase, they'll know. If it's a firearm seller and they've created some kind of violation, they have immediate access to that. So it just helps provide the information immediately if there's been someone already committing some type of crime with buying guns illegally. And then this is requiring a merchant code. So what has happened is in a lot of these mass shootings, the way that these arsenals get built is online. A lot of these people are buying the guns and the ammunition online, and nobody is tracking this. The credit cards aren't able to see that this is happening. So this would put a specific merchant code for credit cards to say that this is a gun seller, so that they don't need to necessarily track it, but an algorithm might be able to say, here's an individual and they've just spent $40,000 at a
Steve, we lost the sound.
There we go.
There's some sound.
Sorry, can you hear now? You have sound, Susan?
Yes, thanks.
he didn't want militias being identified when they were
That's right.
arming. Okay, and the last one, this has not been, let's see, what was required, sorry.
I can't get that black bar off.
No, it's okay, let me
Social
see.
media protect through disclosure.
Oh, yes, okay, same thing, some young people have been able to buy drugs and firearms online illegally. So this is putting some requirements around the social media companies to actually put some, I'm not as familiar with this law, but put some provisions around to be able to identify when this is happening. And I'm not sure what the last one, but we'll see.
That 158. Yeah.
Yes, SP 24158, yes. And then there are two that have not been introduced yet, and they're very interesting ones. One is about vehicle safe storage. It would require gun owners leaving firearms in vehicles to store them in a locked, hard-sided container that's not visible from the outside. I don't know if you're aware, but a lot of car break-ins are to get firearms. That's where a significant number of firearms come from, or break-ins. Also, another one that's not been introduced yet is firearms dealer licensing, and it creates a system where federally licensed firearm dealers must apply for a state license to sell firearms. This requirement includes responsible business practices and safety measures, and gives the state the power to conduct oversight and suspend permits to sell for not following state or federal law. Right now, there's not a ton of state oversight. Yeah,
Have any of these specific bills been introduced in the past and failed?
yes, so that top one,
It's all-
the one about the prohibit certain weapons used in mass shootings. It was kind of a late ad last year. And they weren't able to get the support that they needed to get it passed. I think they're doing a lot more due diligence this time. There are currently 10 states and Washington DC that have that same law. So it's not some unusual law. In fact, it's actually not as strict as some of those laws are. Illinois just passed last year a really very strict one that also prohibits possession of these type of weapons. So there shouldn't be any type of legitimate judicial opposition to those laws. So I have outlined each law on an individual slide. We can go through any of them that you like, if you have any questions, or I can send this deck out and you can research on your own. Everything that's dark, I think, has been making its way. The others still need to be, I think they still need to be introduced. But anyway, the top ones in dark are kind of the main ones that would make the biggest difference. And the great news is there used to be just a couple legislators that were survivors of gun violence that would run these bills. And that's really hard because you're in there with the opposition hearing some pretty tough things. Now, very broadly, people are sponsoring these bills and you'll get multiple sponsors. So it's not just a few people going alone. And I find that really, really encouraging. Yeah, so this just gives you a little bit more detail on these. And so when we go for advocacy days, these are the type of bills that we would be talking about. And if you don't want to come to advocacy day, but you just want to write a letter or give a call, you can call about, of course, you can call about any of these and use the name or just say, in general, I really want you to make sure you're supporting these bills. Or if they're not, ask them why. Make them tell you why they wouldn't do this. Because a lot of them don't have really solid answers. Yeah. Yeah, so it's a whole variety. The domestic violence bill, I think one of the votes was unanimous and it does have a Republican sponsor. So this is not just Democrats doing this. And I forgot to mention that my organization is also nonpartisan. We have folks from all parties that do this work, and same with elections, we make sure that we give those distinctions to folks that want to support gun safety, not just by party. So if this is interesting to you or you want to learn more, there's a link and a QR code to help you find your legislator and figure out who represents you. And that other link helps you go and look at those bills I was talking about. And same thing, I'll put this in an email. So the next thing I want to talk about is elections. And this is another really key part about making sure that we can move towards a safer community. So we can write all the bills we want, but if we don't have people that will vote for them, they're not going to go very far. So the next step is making sure that we have candidates who are committed to supporting our values and our safety. So maybe it was 4 election cycles ago, they started at the very highest level. So a lot of the federal seats doing these distinctions, and they're not endorsements. So sometimes you'll find several candidates running in a primary that will have this distinction, and that's okay. That means, so we're not giving them money, but what we're saying is by giving them this distinction, it says that they are committed to the same values that we are around gun safety. And so what happens is if a candidate is interested in getting this distinction, they'll fill out a survey that goes to every town. They review it. They review all their prior actions, their prior votes, their prior commitments. And then it comes to us locally. We give our local insight, and then they're either given it or denied the distinction. But if you see somebody with that distinction, you should be able to believe that they will lead with gun safety as a top issue. And there's a website, gunsensevoter.com, and We just started giving these out for the 2024 election. But as the year goes on, more and more candidates will be added to that website, and you can search it by area. So let's say your sister calls and they live in Texas and they say, I would love to find a gun sense candidate in my area. I have no idea who it is. You could send her to this site and she could look it up in her area, and then that could be who she goes to support. So once a candidate has that, the moms groups then can go and support them as a group. So you can, of course, support anybody you want as a person, but you can go and wear your mom's shirt and represent them and talk about the fact that they have this distinction. And I'm hoping we'll see some Douglas County candidates with this, hopefully. And in Littleton, I do know several have already applied, so that's great news. So this is what is coming up for the year. On March 25th is the presidential primary election. Hopefully you've already all gotten your ballots. Soon after, or actually a little bit before that, I have that in the wrong order because it's not on a set day. You'll be having local party caucuses, and you should be hearing from your local party as to when that is. And then June, that's when our state primary election is. You'll get the ballots at the beginning of the month, and 25th is the election date, and then November 5th is the big day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So out of this presentation, here is what I'd love you leaving with some action items. I'd love you to feel like there's something that you can do if you want to. You can always join St. Andrew's gun violence efforts. I think it's really important, and I think the more people they get, the better. You can contact your legislators. We talked a little bit about that. The important thing is, no matter what you're talking about, make sure you tell them their constituent. They need to listen to you, and they should be tracking how many times they're contacted. So if it's by email or phone or letter, they should be taking each with the same level of significance. Please join us for Advocacy Day. It would be great to see you if you'd like to come. And then, of course, you are welcome to attend any of those committee hearings for any of those bills. Those will be listed on that website that I told you about. The way those work is they'll assign a committee and a committee room and a time. Now, those are not always really solid because of what I said before. They listen to every testimony, so they can't say this bill is going to run from 1 to 3, but they'll tell you what days they're going to hear which bills. And they try to group similar bills so that if you are there for a particular issue, you can speak on multiple bills. And remember, you can always go in support or in opposition. So if there's a bill running that you think is really dangerous, and I didn't touch on those, if gun safety or gun violence prevention is a big issue to you, there are lots of bills that get run every year that are really dangerous, and you can always go speak in opposition to those. Like I said, all you have to do is sign up and you'll be heard. It usually is it depends on how many people are there, but they'll usually cap your testimony to be about 90 minutes to 3 minutes. They'll let you know ahead of time. They'll bring you up in a group of people that are on the same side as you, and you'll sit at a table in front of the committee members. You can read your testimony, and then they have the opportunity to ask you questions. And then you go sit down. And so you have the opportunity to do that. You also have the opportunity to do it by Zoom if you like, or like I said, you can do written testimony, submit it, and it gets emailed to all of the committee members and it goes on record. And you can also just go and show your support. You don't have to testify. You could just be in that room to be another body. These are usually very, very emotional hearings. People are coming in and telling very personal ways that gun violence has impacted their lives. And it's hard to hear, but also really, I think really powerful and empowering for these folks to be able to tell these stories and do something about it. Take action. That's what we're about. And we really like to help empower and support any survivor that is willing to do this. Because on the other side, they have to hear some really tough things. So you're welcome to go and just be a presence in that room, and come in or out. You don't have to be there for a set number of times. So if you're interested in that, I could always talk to you about it. I've seen some really cool things here. Some members of St. Andrew go and do some really incredible testimony on various bills. And I'm always impressed by what the folks here can do at the Capitol. And the last thing is, if you're interested in doing more around gun violence, this is the app that we use. And we put our events in there, we put news stories in there. There's an area where you can have discussions and share your feelings on things that have happened. If there's a national event or a local event around gun violence, there will be resources there for you. So it's a really nice app, and it's also a really easy way to put in your zip code, and it'll pop in all the local events that are happening. This will be important around election time because we'll be hosting postcard events, calling, door knocking, all kinds of things for various candidates. We'll put town halls in there so that you can go listen to your candidates talk, and hopefully they'll touch on gun violence. So this is an app that if you want, you can either use those QR codes, you can go to your app store, or you can text the word app to 64433 and it'll send you a link to download it. So that's if you're interested in doing more with us. And that's all I have. I know I probably don't have time.
Well,
Right.
we've got about 13 minutes left. Let's ask questions and comments.
I'm gonna take notes too.
Linda,
Having spent 25 years down at the Capitol as a professional lobbyist, the legislators listen to real people before they listen to lobbyists. So go down, support, talk, or, call, let your legislators know what their opinion is.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for doing that work too.
I can't imagine in a crowd of thousands of people, how we could ever find all the concealed weapons that might come in. How could that?
Oh,
be
with that law?
Yeah, that second.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't read all the
Can't
specifics
imagine.
about how it'll be enforced. But I do think, yeah, I think it's a good first step, but I haven't read all the bill language, but I think that's a good one to read. I will read, and if there's some information around that, I will reply back. Yeah. Yeah.
Why did you get involved personally?
I take things very personally, and knowing that these numbers are so high, and watching kids die, and watching people die just living in their homes or being in their neighborhoods, to me feels unacceptable. And for a long time I felt really helpless, and it just ate away at me. And then I learned that actually trying to do something about it is the way that I can it's the only way I can function, I guess. Yeah, it helps me feel more empowered and less helpless. And for me, the catalyst was actually that got me really furious was Sandy Hook. We had been living abroad, and my kids were in a school in Switzerland, and I never once at all thought about gun violence ever. And then we moved back to the United States, and I had two little girls. One was in second grade, one was in kindergarten, and they were in an American school for the first time. And I sat on my couch, I had a brand new baby, sat on my couch watching that happen, and I was horrified, and it just shook me. And then when I saw that nothing changed, I was furious and angry and helpless, and I didn't know where to direct that energy until then we moved here a year later, and I met the folks starting the group in Douglas County and joined that. And I've not been able to leave because it's been really important, but that's why. Yeah, thanks.
And Steve, did you have a question?
Yeah, on that liability insurance.
Yes.
If an insurance company did have to pay it out, does the money go to a survivor, or does it go into a fund and then that gets distributed? Do you know much about that legislation?
What I believe, let me read it to you. That's a great question. It requires gun owners to maintain liability insurance coverage of at least $100,000 for any person who's injured on their property. In the case of an accidental shooting, it requires that insurance companies offer this coverage and fines gun owners who fail to obtain the coverage. It also establishes a system for those who are indigent or have been denied coverage. So yeah, it looks like it goes directly to a person. Yeah.
Has there been any kickback from insurance companies? And have you provided that type of insurance?
I don't know. I was really surprised to see this bill this year, so I don't know enough about it. I need to do more research on it, but it's a good question, and I'm curious where the insurance companies stand on it as well, specifically with their lobbyists. So if I can get an answer, I'll add that to my note back to the class, but it's a very good point because yeah, it's an interesting industry.
I want to give our Zoomers a chance to ask a question without feeling like they're interrupting us. Susan has her hand up. Go ahead.
Well, what is the position on the buyback programs that have been so effective, like in Australia? Does your group have a position on that, or has there been any research to, are they supported or not?
It's not something we run ourselves, but that's an example of when we partner with groups that are already doing something really well in a community. There are a lot of groups that we partner with, and we've done several of them all around. And I've been part of them, and they're really powerful. And they were talking about the types of guns they've been getting, just kind of in trends, and they're getting more of these more powerful weapons as opposed to just handguns. So yes, we do support them. We don't organize them ourselves, but we help support groups that do. And it's possible there might be something done locally around here as well. Yeah, that's a great question. They are, it's amazing to see what they get. Oh,
Any other Zoomers? Not at the moment? Okay. Yeah, the buyback in Australia made a big difference, didn't it?
It did.
Really, people turned in thousands of guns and it reduced the violence level.
yeah, and I think that was run by the government, wasn't it? The buyback, yeah. Right now, anything that I've been part of is part of a nonprofit or a private group. Sometimes law enforcement will do them, but I've never been part of one that's run by the government. But I would love to see that.
Norlee.
I have a question that is more personal.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel threatened by people who are, gun owners? And does your personal position ever cause you, some social threats and things like that?
Yes. It's more on, it's not, I've never had it directly to my face. A lot of times it'll be, used to be on social media. I'm not on social media anymore. I do know there are some local groups that, know who a lot of us are and, have opinions about us. But, yeah, so I do know that. And it used to intimidate me and, but I also know that's their tactic. And so I don't allow that to scare me anymore. But it used to. Yeah, I used to find it really intimidating, but, they don't love us. But it's a good question. And I will say this, for our meetings and things that we do, we take a lot of precautions because we have survivors. So we are always very careful that when we have these broader local meetings, that we make sure we're centering safety.
Excuse me,
Go ahead, Gene. That's okay.
the Kansas City shootings
Yes.
at the parade, the culprits indicated they carried guns with them because they knew others had guns and to be safe. I've heard that said here in Denver as well, carrying guns to school. Are the schools attempting any way of dealing with the fear factor? And the fact is you come prepared because you want to keep safe, so you carry a gun with you to school. And the schools address this in a way of any mental health interventions or discussions, particularly around fear.
Yeah. I believe so. We actually have a member here at St. Andrew that is a mental health professional that deals with this quite a bit. Yes, so I know they are doing their best. Again, I don't know for young people, I don't know all the different things that they are dealing with outside of their lives. So I do always want to be sensitive to that belief and that feeling of not being safe. So I think that is a really important thing. And there are lots of organizations that do work with those young people and work with the factors that might not make them feel safe. So I do know there are that is an important issue. I also know statistically, I don't want to invalidate that feeling, but I do know statistically having the firearm does not make them safer. So I do hope that the right actions are taken to make sure that they can feel safer and that they understand what would make them safer. Yeah, but it's it's an important concern and it is a good question. Yeah,
Laura, we're looking at, in the future, potentially having a panel discussion, with a number of different professionals and one of them being a mental health professional and giving their insight on this issue.
yeah. But it is tough for the schools. The schools are really struggling.
Rosalinda.
Where does the gun lobby stand on this?
These laws?
Yeah, I mean, because that is against
Yes.
them.
So here's what I'll tell you about the gun lobby. I have found that they are not using, they're not backing up their own words. So often they say they are there to support gun owners. A lot of these laws do make gun owners safer. A lot of times they talk about responsible gun ownership. These laws are about helping facilitate responsible gun ownership, and they stand against all of them. They will not support them, but they also won't give you evidence or data about why, or what the alternative is. A lot of times they'll say no, and then we'll say, what is the alternative? And they just say nothing. And so it's a very frustrating lobby to go up against.
Yeah, it has in the past, you know, when somebody had a gun and was shooting, there were people that had guns, they didn't want to shoot, but they kept them at bay, you know,
Mhm.
so they couldn't shoot any more people when they go, you know.
Yeah, yeah, it is, in my opinion, the intention, and the groups that the gun lobby now serves, in my opinion, it's not gun owners. To me, I think it's gun sellers. I think
Money.
they do what they can. I view them, this is my personal opinion, this is not mom's, this is me. I view them as outside sales for the gun manufacturers. And I think they will do anything to promote more proliferation of firearms.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, I grew up in Germany and you hardly hear anything about gun violence.
Yes,
In Germany.
no,
Are there
Because-
strict laws?
Yeah,
in
you cannot
Germany?
own a gun, yeah.
Can people own handguns privately
You should.
in Germany?
No.
No? Interesting.
There's no reason, they say, you know, because nobody, for what?
Yeah. Yes, things have, in my opinion, have spiraled out of control in terms of the way we
Yes.
view gun
Yeah.
ownership.
But like I said, you know, it's the money behind it that sells the guns that pushes
Yes,
away with it. You know?
yes, I've
Yeah.
seen some shocking things from them recently.
We've got just a few minutes left. A couple people wanted me to ask your opinion, Laura, on concealed guns in church.
Correct, okay.
At St. Andrew, we do have a security guard that
Mhm.
has a concealed gun. And we have some church members who carry concealed guns that we know of. And it all, of course, to be reactive if there was a gun situation here. Some people advocate that we ought to go even farther and have metal detectors. People walk through metal detectors to get into church. But of course, people say that would deter people from coming to
Yeah.
church. We don't want to go that far. So what do you think about that? Or what does moms think about?
Okay, yeah, well, the good news is there's lots of data, a lot of evidence about this. So it basically boils down to more guns equals more gun violence.
Yeah.
You are not safer when there are more guns. So I will share those studies because it's a great question. And I understand that feeling that if I have this, I'm safer, but that's not necessarily the case. Also regarding metal detectors, this is not a mom's position, but this is something that I've put a lot of thought in because there's a big push by our commissioners to put these in our schools. And all it does is it creates a bottleneck. And so you have all these students waiting to get in. And I don't want to use this word, but it's almost like they're sitting ducks. You've just created a more dangerous situation. You've created a bigger cost. And plus there's a mental piece of that, like you just referenced, coming in. I'm not saying that, you know, they don't work, but I do think, I don't know if they work as well as people want to believe that they do. Yeah, but it's a great question, and I will provide the evidence and study so people can do the research and and come up with those answers, about what would be safer.
No perfect
not.
answer.
No, and I do know, the climate of our country has really shifted and the rhetoric is very violent and we are seeing actual violence and that's scary. Yes, so I don't want to invalidate anybody's concerns. They are legitimate.
Yes. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So recently, the NRA has been trying this bankruptcy tactic.
Mhm.
How do we see that playing out in the upcoming election with funding for advertising for or against all this legislation?
It's a great question. I'm curious to see how that is and where those funds would come from. They still, despite losing their leader and having a lot of corruption and, financial woes, they still seem to have a power with a lot of legislators. So I'm curious how that will play out. What I will tell you, what I've seen, and this is a trend, like this is, I could pull some data for you, but years ago, you would never even hear any discussion about gun violence at all. And that would be from Democrats. In fact, a lot of Democrats would put up pictures of them holding guns or hunting or whatever to be able to appeal to a broader set of voters. And that a lot of that was about the NRA. One piece I'll tell you about the NRA is they're not publishing their grades anymore. They used to grade these candidates, and I don't think those are published at the same way that they used to. They were kind of like a weapon before. Now, I see a real tide shifting. So the 2020 election, every single primary candidate, and at least on the Democrat side, I think we had almost 20, 17. We had a lot. Every single one of those candidates showed up for a forum with Everytown and Moms Demand Action and sat with a survivor and a student and a volunteer and talked specifically for, I think it was about 30 minutes about specifically gun violence. I had never seen that before. And they went on the record and you could still find those recordings now. And so I think there's been a real shift about wanting to be open and direct. One of the first candidates I saw do that here locally, and it was successful, was Jason Crow. He did CD6. I used to be part of CD6. I'm no longer, unfortunately. But I remember he partnered with us. He would be seen with us in our shirts. He wanted us out campaigning for him, and he made a commercial talking about gun violence. And he also addressed the fact that he was in the military and how he felt about, assault weapons. And I was so impressed. And he was up against Mike Hoffman, who took a significant amount of money from the NRA. He was one of the top, he was one of their top candidates in terms of receiving funds, and he won. And I think that really inspired a lot of candidates to feel more courageous to be able to do that. And so I'm hoping more and more. And I also am finding when I have personal conversations with people who are of all different parties, they are not saying the same thing that their legislators are saying in terms of some of these very extreme Republicans like Lauren Boebert that takes photos with her kids holding guns. I find that people that she represents don't feel the same way that she does. And I think that's a lot of pressure from the gun lobby. And I'm hoping as they lose power and money and they see that it's not an effective tactic, I'm hoping that shifts. Yeah.
We're out of time, but thank you, Laura, for a very good presentation.
So I'll send an email, I'll put some resources to be able, there's a great podcast about the NRA that I can put in there.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. See you next week.
Thank you.
Oh.